Surli sapuri sana, mamutara tore sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, mamuda baba sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, dongar paro tinggi manam sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, dongar paro tinggi manam sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, manamura baba sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, girgara sari ha sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, girgara sari ha sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, koya sana li ha sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, koya batana li ha sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana, intiya hum sai sapuri sana. Surli sapuri sana.
In India, they are known as Adivasis, meaning the early settlers. They constitute almost 8% of the country's population. Most of them have been categorized under the Indian constitutional framework as scheduled tribes, who include some primitive tribal groups also. Since ages, these people have been enjoying their distinguished honor in the Indian tradition, as the Hindu caste system doesn't attempt to put them under its regime, and the ancient Hindu epics rather speak of maintaining a cordial relationship with them. These early settlers of India were pioneers in domesticating animals and plants, inventing agriculture, metallurgy, herbal medicine, pottery, handlooms, and handicrafts. In course of time, as it happens in all civilizations, they lost some of their areas to the elite non-forest dwellers, but not their distinguished cultural identity, which they preserve till today, despite the impact of time. Odisha has been a province where a rich diversity of tribal population and culture exists even today, with as many as 62 scheduled tribes and 13 primitive tribal groups. In fact, scheduled tribes share as much as almost 25% share in the total population in the eastern state of India. Lord Jagannatha of Puri, the chief deity of the dominant population, owes a close link with the Sabara tribals. The Adivasis loved forests, and hence they avoided joining the mainstream civilization. Forest has been their all-embracing Mother Earth and their strength for independence. The mainstream civilization understood and respected this symbiotic relationship of the tribals with the forests. Both streams maintained a more or less cordial relationship with each other, with the feudal rulers maintaining a policy of little or no intervention in the tribal regions. However, in few cases, the feudal rulers did deviate from the regular policy and attempted to make financial or political impositions on the tribals, which forced some of the vulnerable communities, like the Bhuyas of Kendujar, to shift to hills and practice shifting cultivation. But quite often, this deviation was retaliated with a violent response leading to a revolt and bloodshed. The tribal history clearly states that in several cases, they themselves invited potential individuals from the mainstream civilization to take charge of the local administration, and accordingly, a ritualistic approval of the tribal head was to be an essential part of each coronation ceremony of their king. But ironically, some of the successors of these invited individuals dishonored this relationship and dealt with the tribals as their subjects. Hence, the tribals lost their lands and forests either to the conquerors or to the betrayers. Gradually, they got more and more isolated, with smaller regions under their control. The colonial period saw a commercial revolution in forest history, and huge supplies of timber was required for construction of railways, ships, and wartime measures. This in turn led to the reservation of forests. Although the ideal process of reservation did acknowledge proper consideration of the rights and privileges of the local people, including the tribals, in practice, most feudal rulers ignored these norms and reserved forests as they pleased. Even in areas directly under the British control, some individual forest staff intentionally put the reserve boundary line close to or in the village areas, either because they did not receive the bribe they wanted or they did not want to take pains to do the necessary survey work in the virtually inaccessible areas. Terrains beyond 10-degree slope were often mapped as hill forest areas, though there were lands of cultivation and habitation there. The result was that those who actually owned the forests were now regarded as encroachers or trespassers in their own land, thereby being subjected to penalties and imprisonment. Noted anthropologist Dr. Verrier Elwin and a senior officer of the Indian Civil Service, Mr. R.K. Ramdhyani, exposed all these in their reports, that too prior to the independence of India. Unfortunately, the government of independent India did not pay due attention to this injustice and legalized all such reservations. Moreover, it went a step ahead, and with a goodwill for development, it allowed a huge displacement for construction of dams, industries, and other such projects, and the development process strived to progress at the cost of the life and livelihood of the tribals and other innocent local people. The displacement was compensated with money for the land and house, but never for the livelihood, culture, and dignity. Yes, the welfare state did adopt a policy of improving the status of the tribals by providing them special opportunities in education and employment, etc., but ignored the very fact that these people were gradually becoming more vulnerable with resource marginalization. Mining companies ravaged the precious ecosystems, and commercial monoculture destroyed valuable natural forests. In fact, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 was used more in favor of the destroyers of forests. In 2002, things became worse when the Inspector General of Forests misinterpreted a ruling by the Supreme Court and ordered for evicting all encroachers from the forests. Thousands of houses of the poor and traditional forest dwellers were destroyed by the authorities in some parts of India to carry out this order, and their crops were burnt. It is true that in some parts of India, like in the northeastern states, and also in the coastal belt like the Bhitarkanika area, the valuable forest lands were often encroached and cleared by people who were not forest lovers like the Adivasis, and who did not share any symbiotic relationship with the forests. But these people were smart and capable enough to withstand the impact of the eviction drive, whereas the real and innocent forest dwellers did not have that capacity. Hence, those who truly loved forests suffered the most. The civil society of India could not remain silent to such extremities, and started a campaign for the survival and dignity of these poor and marginalized traditional forest dwellers. The intellectual and non-violent struggle against the historic injustice finally succeeded in the promulgation of what is now popularly known as the Forest Rights Act, which the Indian Parliament passed in December 2006. This act, legally read as the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, provides ample scope for the traditional forest dwellers to legally reclaim their lands, either for individual homestead or cultivation purpose or for community resource use. It doesn't allow previous regimes to easily deprive the forest dwellers of their lands and livelihood in the name of wildlife conservation or anything else. Moreover, it entrusts the claimant communities with the responsibility of preserving and sustainably managing the forest ecosystem to be put under their control.
ମୋ ନାଁ ଆଜ୍ଞା ଜଗେଶ୍ୱର ନାୟକ, ମୋ ଘର ସିଆରମାଳିଆ। ଆଉ ଆମର ଇନକୁଲ ଜମି ଅଛି, ହେଲେ ସରକାରୀ ଜମି ଯେଉଁଟାକି ଇନକୁଲ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଜମିଟାକୁ, ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ ସରକାରକୁ ଇନକୁଲ କେସ୍ ଦେଇଛୁ। ତାପରେ ଏଇ ଯେତେବେଳେ କି ଆମ ଭିଏସ୍ କମିଟି ହେଲା କିମ୍ବା RCDC କମିଟି ହେଲା, ଆମେ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ମିଟିଂ ମୋତେ ଡକେଇଛନ୍ତି। ଆଉ ମୁଁ ଯାଇଛି ସେଠି ସବୁ ପ୍ରକାର କଥା ଶୁଣିଛି, ଜାଣିଛି। ଜାଣିଲା ପରେ ଏବେ ଆମ ସିଆରମାଳିରେ ଆଦିବାସୀ ସରକାରୀ ଜମିଟା କିପରି ତା ରେକର୍ଡ଼ ହେବ, ଏଇଟା RI ବିଭାଗ ଯାଇକରି ଆମକୁ ସବୁ ନକଲ ଦେଇକରି ସ୍ୱାକ୍ଷର କରିକି ସବୁ କାମ କରିଦେଇଛନ୍ତି। ହେଲେ କେବେ ପାଇବୁ କ'ଣ ହେବ ସେଇ କଥାଟାକୁ ମୁଁ କହିପାରୁନି, କିନ୍ତୁ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ମିଟିଂରେ ଆମେ ଆଟେଣ୍ଡ ହେଇକରି ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ କଥା ଆମେ ଶୁଣି ଶୁଣି ଆସୁ। ଯେ ପ୍ରକୃତ ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆମର ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଜମି ମୋ ଅଜା କରିଥିଲେ, ସେଇ ଜମିଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଏପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଚାଷ କରି ଆସୁଛୁ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଆମେ ରେକର୍ଡ଼ ପାଇନୁ। ପଟା ନାହିଁ, ପତ୍ର ନାହିଁ, କିଛି ନାହିଁ। 5 ବର୍ଷ 2 ବର୍ଷ ଦିଅ ପଇସା, ଏତିକି ହଜାର ଆମେ ଦେଉଛୁ। ଆଉ କ'ଣ କରିବୁ? କିନ୍ତୁ ମୋ ଅଜା ଦେଇକରି ମୋ ଅଜା କେତେ ବର୍ଷ ହେଲା ମଲା, ମୋ ବାପ ମଲା ମୋତେ ହେଲା 65 ବର୍ଷ। ସରକାର ଆମେ ଆପ୍ଲାଏ କରିଛୁ, ଆପ୍ଲାଏ କରି ଆମେ ପଟା ସରକାର ଯଦି ଦେଉଛନ୍ତି ଆମକୁ, ଆମେ ଖୁସି ହେବୁ। ଆଉ ଯେଉଁ ପଇସା ପହଞ୍ଚୁଥିଲା ପଇସା ପାଇବୁନି, ଖଣ୍ଡା ଖାଲି ଦେବୁ ଯାହା।
So who are eligible under this right? Eligibility to get rights under the Act is confined to those who primarily reside in forests and who depend on forests and forest land for a livelihood. Further, either the claimant must be a member of the scheduled tribes scheduled in that area or must have been residing in the forest for 75 years. In this act, the forest dwellers get 2 categories and 4 types of rights. The first category is individual, and the second category is community-based rights. The 4 types of rights are: 1. Land title rights. 2. Usufruct rights. 3. Relief and development rights. 4. The right to protect and conserve. The title right recognizes an inalienable tenurial right, both on homestead land and the land under cultivation before the cutoff date of Forest Rights Act, that is 13th December 2005, and that too subject to a maximum of 4 hectares. This means that new lands acquired after this cutoff date will not be recognized. Forest dwellers other than tribals must be cultivating the land for more than 3 generations or 75 years. This tenurial right is a virtual ownership, but not an actual one, since it can't be transferred or sold. Similar rights are recognized for community resources on forest lands. The Act recognizes right to grazing grounds, water bodies, and burial grounds, etc. Further, it grants rights to traditional areas of use by nomadic or pastoralist communities. What is very important is that this Act defines for the first time in India the minor forest produce, considering it at par with non-timber forest produce, and doesn't allow for any kind of discrimination that prevailed earlier due to lack of such a definition. Now, minor forest produce would mean all kinds of non-timber forest products ranging from bamboo to grass, and the forest rights holders are eligible for collection of all such minor forest produce that has been traditionally collected. The Act recognizes ownership right over these minor forest products. The Act recognizes right to rehabilitation in case of illegal eviction or forced displacement of forest-dwelling peoples prior to 13 December 2005, and to basic amenities such as roads, schools, Anganwadi, and community centers, etc., subject to restrictions for forest protection. This law also gives the community the right to protect and manage the forest and to protect wildlife and biodiversity without any condition of joint forest management. This is vital for the thousands of village communities who are protecting their forests and wildlife against threats from forest mafias, industries, and land grabbers.
आज आम आलोचना करवा जंगल अधिकार आईन तादरे जंगल अधिकार आईन सुविधा हमको सुजोग कौन देछि से विषय में आलोचना करवा.
The process of submission of claims and recognition of rights has been made very democratic, starting from the village level. The Gram Panchayat convenes an assembly of the villagers known as Gram Sabha, and this Gram Sabha appoints a committee known as the Forest Rights Committee, or FRC, instituted by popular selection or election among the villagers. Each such committee shall have 10 to 15 members, and at least 1/3 should be scheduled tribes, and 1/3 members will consist of women. The committee will elect a member president and member secretary.
जंगल अधिकार आईन बल रे ए आईन बल रे हमको प्रथमे जदि आम अधिकार पाइबा आम चिंता करूचे ताले हमको प्रथमे गोटे पुलिस सभा करिया पड़िबो.
The main duty of the FRC is to collect claims and application from claimants. On that basis, a detailed report of who to get what and how much is prepared after field verification. This report is then presented before the Gram Sabha. The Gram Sabha approves it with a resolution. Then, the resolution is sent to the Subdivision Level Committee, or SDLC, on forest rights. The SDLC may accept or reject the claims after screening. Appeal against rejection can be made to the District Level Committee, or DLC. But if DLC also rejects the claim, then no further appeal is possible. So, the DLC is the final decision-making authority on the claims. There is also a state-level committee, or SLMC, to monitor the process. All these committees at subdivision level, district level, and state level consists of 3 government officials, each from the forest, revenue, and tribal welfare departments.
मु गणपति प्रधान देवगढ़ जिला जंगल सुरक्षा महासंघ सभापति. सबु गाँ परी आम गाँव में सरकार जंगल जमी अधिकार कमिटी गठन होता. आम गाँव ग्रामवासी सहायता 15 जनिया कमिटी सहायता समस्ते मिसी आमर गाँव जी जंगल जमी आदिवासी अन्य पारंपरिक वनवासी समस्ते जो दखल कर गोटे माने लिस्ट करी आमे फॉर्म फिलअप करी आमे एसडीएलसी को पठेइथु जोरा पुलिस सभा पास करथिला आ समस्त ग्रामवासी सहयोग करथिले. याकू एसडीएलसी को पठेया परे सेटा वेरिफिकेशन पई हमर एठी आसीची आ जोडा फरे आमे आज ताको माने वेरिफिकेशन काम चलीची. तापर आमे खाली क फॉर्म नाही ख फॉर्म मध्ये अप्लाई हेजी कि ख फॉर्म गुड़ाक आमर एसडीएलसी एपर्यंत पठे ना. एमती सारा जिलार आमर विभिन्न गाँव में सब कार्यक्रम चली किंतु संतोषजनक भाव आम जिले यहाँ हो पारुनी. किंतु आमर एठी जहाँ होती से केते दूर माने फलवती हेब आम कल्पना कर पारुन. देखा जाए भविष्य कौन हम.
मोर ना नेपाल साहू आज्ञा मुई नुआडी राजस्व विभाग जड़े कर्मचारी. देखु आज्ञा आमको जी केस आसाला सब लोग को आम नोटिस करके डकईदेलु. डकईदेला से सब एकाठे जमा हेले आम जन जन गिरी सब जमी मापिकी देखदेलु जगह जार जी एरिया बाहरला से केस हिसाब से समस्त को करदेगी जो जंगल कमिटी जहाँ जहाँ दस्खत कर सब पठे
The civil society activism not only helped in bringing in the Forest Rights Act, but also it has been facilitating the implementation of the whole process so that the claimants who are not in a position to go through the process themselves because of their lack of awareness and literary incapability can get their claims recognized under the Act.
जंगल जमी आवेदन कर फर्म किए आसी तुमको मापजूप करवा लगी काना
नहीं आज्ञा मापजूप करवा के आसी नहीं आमे भी आज आसबे खाली आसबे बरखरे आमर आशा भी रहला आमर 100 वर्षर गाम नहीं मिलबार नहीं जंगल जमी आमके पट्टा पाइबार कथा.
As such, a number of non-government organizations have been working as facilitators to this process, assisting both the government as well as the people for smooth implementation of the Act. Regional Center for Development Cooperation, popularly known as RCDC, is one such organization. Gajapati, Raigada, Koraput, Nayagad, Baud, Devgarh, Kalahandi, Navrangpur and Bolangir are the 9 districts in Odisha in which RCDC has its direct intervention program on Forest Rights Act. Besides, RCDC also facilitates the process through district forest forums in 12 districts of the state. The major activities of RCDC are providing training and documentation support to the communities, facilitating submission of individual and community claims, institution building of the forest right holders, advocacy and networking, case study collection for circulation.
The major challenges of FRA are lack of awareness at the level of the people and the lack of necessary coordination at the level of the concerned department of the government. And in fact, the forest dwellers are not in a stage to take optimum advantage of the provisions of the FRA. The forest department is assigned a major role to play here, but the staffs are mostly found busy in other project activities. So, they are unable to give due attention to the Forest Right Act. And next thing, the tribal welfare department also doesn't have adequate capacity to deal with these issues. Further, it has been reported that people have not been explained in writings why their claims were rejected by the SDLC. So, they are unable to appeal. There are local issues too, like the primitive tribal groups required specific support to get rights under FRA. Those who practice shifting cultivation, they usually shift their cultivation site from one place to another place, and when they submit their claims for all the patches, the actual titles they received covered only a part of that. In fact, the progress under community rights is not satisfactory, and even the genuine claims of the forest protecting communities are also ignored in some cases.
व्यक्तिगत आवेदन ए जिले में बहुत बेसी एपर्यंत आम पाखे 10,000 रु अधिक हे से आम 3,000 रु अधिक पटा बांटा कर देचु पटा भी आम रेडी आम पाखे अच्छी से प्रोग्रेस टी भल अच्छी आम भावुँ जो रेस्ट जो रहीगला 6,000 7,000 भितर यथाशीघ्र पटार व्यवस्था करा गोष्ठीगत दाबी आम पाखे एपर्यंत 51टी मात्र आम पाइछू 51टी आम देखुचु जहाँ आम जो स्क्रूटिनी करने कथा स्क्रीनिंग करने कथा से देखुचु मात्र 10टी उपयुक्त भाव में विवेचित होती अन्य गुड़ाक हो पारना कारण से जेहेतु इनिशियली लोक मैंने गोष्ठीगत जंगल जमी आप्लाय करते किछिटा बुझार भूल भाल था जो आप्लिकेसन ठीक भाव में पाइपारूँ से आम पुणी ग्राम सभा को पठेबू से ठीक ठाक करके देवे ताहले आम करूँ जो 10टी आम पाखे अच्छी आम यथाशीघ्र गोष्ठीगत पटा देवाई व्यवस्था ग्रहण करुँ.
With RCDC support, hundreds of forest dwellers have now been able to get their rights recognized. In addition to that, people have become so active that in a remote village, Gumkudi in the Raigada district, the local villagers stopped the forest department to carry out a plantation program in the area claimed by them. And an 18-year-old boy, Purandar, even challenged the forest officials' rights over the forest. And in villages like Sunabada in the Gajapati district, people still expect more from RCDC as they know that this is only the beginning.
ଗାଁ ଲୋକ ଆରସିଡିସି ଟୁ ଆଉ କିଛି ଆଶା କରୁଛନ୍ତି କି?
କୋଟା କୋଟା ବାକି ସେଟା ମିଲବା କୋଉ ଜିନିଷର ମିଲବ ସେଇ ଜିନିଷ ପାଇ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଆପଣ ନଥିଲେ ଆମେ ପାଇପାରିବନି।
ଆଉ ପାଇଗଲା ପରେ
ଯେତେ ରାସ୍ତା ଅଛି ଯେତେ ରାସ୍ତା ଖୋଲା ଅଛି ସେ ରାସ୍ତାର ଦେଖାଇବାର ଆପଣ ଅଛି।
RCDC has a number of programs in which this Forest Rights Act is used as a tool. For instance, in its integrated bioresource governance program, the first key principle of ownership over the local bioresources uses this tool. We, however, know that there are still miles to go and that the present achievements in individual forest rights cannot ensure the equilibrium that is needed for a holistic and sustainable resource use and dependency.
They hardly understand that community means a whole and village means a totality, wherein both individual as well as community resources, they exist complementary to each other and they depend on each other. So without community resource, individual rights would not be much sustainable, and also without individual rights, community resource may not be much beneficial except for few cases like those for the hunter-gatherers. So RCTC is advocating for holistic kind of claims wherein people go simultaneously both for community as well as individual claims with due justification to each other, so that they can expect the whole landscape and the whole land use as they used to have or which they are still using, so that there can be a more sustainable and practical livelihood ensured through the implementation of FRA.
The Forest Rights Act of 2006 is a milestone in Indian democracy as it promises to correct or partially correct the injustice done to the forest-dwelling people. If it is implemented properly, timely, and sincerely, it can help solve many conflicts, unrests, insurgencies, and the issues now facing India. If the true rights of the forest-dwelling people can be returned and reinstituted with them, Mahatma Gandhi's dream of Swaraj will be fulfilled, and we will be right in calling ourselves a democracy.